Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are making a classic Depression era chocolate cake, also known as a wacky cake. All right, if you're new here, hi, I'm Claire. Welcome, come on in and make yourselves comfortable. I love a vintage recipe. I do lots of vintage cooking on this channel, so if you like vintage cookbooks and content like that, make sure you subscribe. I will also leave a playlist of my previous vintage recipes down below. So today I'm actually not cooking from one of my old cookbooks because this is a recipe that my mother used to make when I was little and that my grandmother used to make when she was little because my grandmother was alive and, you know, cooking and eating during the actual Great Depression. Now this cake does go by several different names. I've heard it just called a Great Depression cake. My mother, my grandmother, we always called it a wacky cake growing up. So I will be referring to it as a wacky cake. The reason this cake became popular is because there is no eggs, no milk, and no butter in this recipe. And all three of those things were very expensive and something that a lot of families had to go without during the Great Depression. This cake also made a resurgence in popularity during World War II when we were rationing those things. And it just seemed like a fitting time now that eggs are like $6.50 a dozen at Aldi even, and milk has gone up, and butter is one of those things I pretty much only buy like during the Thanksgiving season when it's on sale and I put it in my freezer. That's kind of where we're at on those ingredients right now. So I thought maybe it's time to explore some of these recipes that were born in a time not that dissimilar to the time we are experiencing now. I also want to say that this cake is accidentally vegan. So if you don't eat eggs or dairy because of your veganism or, I don't know, lactose intolerance or perhaps religious reasons or any of those things, this is a very friendly cake for all of those things too, which I think is great. And with that, let's get going on our chocolate wacky cake. For this recipe, you will need flour, sugar, vegetable oil, water, salt, vinegar, some vanilla extract, some baking soda, and some cocoa powder. A noteworthy thing about the wacky cake is that you do all of your prep work right in the dish that you bake it in. So even better than having really accessible and affordable ingredients, we also only have one dish that we're gonna need to do at the end of this, which is amazing. Now, you could assemble this in a regular sort of fashion in a bowl where we mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients and then put them together like you would a regular cake. However, traditionally, a wacky cake has its own sort of method of putting it together, so I'm gonna share it with you. We are working with an 8x8 glass dish, and I'm not going to grease it. We're gonna start with our flour. We need 1.5 cups of flour. Next, we have our sugar, and we are adding 1 cup. Next, we have our unsweetened cocoa powder, and we're gonna need 1/4 cup of this, but really try to pack it in there, okay? I find that cocoa powder really has like a ton of air in it. We want a packed 1/4 cup, okay? There we go. We're also going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now using a fork, I am just going to mix these ingredients together. All right, it's nice and combined. And now we're going to make 3 wells. Don't ask me why, this is just how you do it. Now 1 well is gonna need to be a little bit bigger than the other 2. And this is where we're gonna put our liquid ingredients except for the water. So in the first well, we're gonna do our vegetable oil. We're gonna need 6 tablespoons, which is the same as 1/4 cup plus 2, but we might as well just do it this way, it's fine. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. In the next well, we're gonna do 1 tablespoon of vinegar. In my research, some recipes use apple cider vinegar. My mom always used white vinegar, so that's what I'm doing, but I think you could probably use whatever kind of vinegar that you have handy. And in the last well, we are going to put 1 teaspoon of our vanilla extract. Now we have 1 cup of water, and we're gonna pour it over the top. And now we're using our same fork again to mix everything. Like, I don't understand the reason for the wells. If you are a person who's made the Wacky cake or knows more about cooking than I do, why the reason you would do the wells instead of, you know, just mixing this all into one, I'm not totally sure. Maybe so we don't over mix it or something. I'm not totally certain why. Or maybe to keep the vinegar separate, maybe, so it doesn't like have like a fizzy reaction or whatever. I'm actually not sure, but this is the way Grandma did it, so this is the way I'm gonna do it. And there we go, there's our cake. Let's put it in the oven. All right, so my oven is preheated to 350. This is gonna take 30 to 40 minutes. So we're gonna set the timer for 30, give it a look, stick a toothpick in it and see where we're at, and then add additional time if we need to. All right, my timer just went off, so let's test this baby out. Oh my God, it looks so nice though. All right, my stick isn't perfectly clean. It's gonna need a couple more minutes. So I'm gonna put it in for 4 more minutes, and I think that'll probably do it. All right, let's try it again. There we go, nice and clean. We can take it out. All right, there we go. Oh my God, it smells so chocolatey. All right, and now for the hardest part, I'm going to let this cool completely before we move on to the next step, which is frosting. All right, our Wacky cake is nice and cool, and it's time to frost it. Frost it. Now, when I was little, my mom famously always bought a tub of Cool Whip and would spread it on top of a Wacky cake just because it was really inexpensive, widely available, nice and light. I feel like I come from a family that prefers a whipped situation rather than like a really thick frosting. My mom very rarely bought like tubs of frosting or even made her own. We were like a Cool Whip kind of family. So that's what we did as kids, which is delicious. However, I'm gonna do what my grandmother did, and because we made this with no butter and no milk, I'm not going to make traditional frosting, which would include butter and milk. So I am just going to sprinkle it with a little bit of powdered sugar. And I think we should go back to doing this kind of thing for cakes. When I make a Victoria sandwich, which is like a lovely little like British cake, you don't frost the outside, and you might like put a little swirl of cream, and of course there's cream in the center, but you don't frost the outside. And I prefer cakes that aren't heavily frosted. You just put a little powdered sugar on a Victoria sandwich. So I'm going to do that because I do think in this sort of Depression era situation, we would likely have powdered sugar instead of having to spring on the more expensive ingredients for our frosting. Also, I'm using this great little tool. It came in my sourdough bread kit that my friend got me for my birthday one year because it works really good for flour if you're flouring like the loaf of bread, but it works really good for this too. Oh, we're just gonna do this. And that's why I waited till it was nice and cool, because if you put powdered sugar on a hot cake, it will just melt into the cake and then it won't look that pretty. There we go. Is it old-fashioned? Yes. Is it pretty? You know, I'm gonna also say yes. Does it look very basic? Of course, but I think that there is definitely a beauty in the simplicity of this, especially because it does look very homemade. And, you know, while a nice, even like from a grocery store bakery cake, looks, you know, pretty, it also looks quite commercial, where this really looks like it was made with love, which if it was your birthday, I think would make it all the more special. So let's slice this up and take a bite. And even though we did not grease the pan, it came out perfectly. We have a nice, light, spongy cake. Excellent. It tastes just like I remember when I was a kid. It's really nice and chocolatey, even though we're only using 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. It's still chocolatey. It's maybe not as light and airy as some other cakes. Obviously, it's way better than a box cake. But if you went to like a bakery, it's not like super duper light. It's a little bit heavier. You really would have no idea that this is vegan. You would not taste it and think, wow, this is really missing something. Where are the eggs? Where's the milk? Where's the butter? You would not miss any of it. It tastes delicious. I really hope you keep this recipe in your back pocket for when those ingredients are too expensive or harder to find, because this is really good. All right, you guys, that was my Great Depression chocolate wacky cake. I hope you like this video. I really am impressed by these old-timey recipes where people really had to get creative with the things they had available to them. It inspires me a lot, not only to try these old recipes, but to also be creative with the ingredients that I have available to me today. So leave me a comment. Have you ever tried a wacky cake? Is this something you, your grandparent, your mother, someone in your life made for you before? I'd also like to hear if you have any other of these types of recipes, whether it's World War II or Great Depression, maybe from someone in your family, where you really had to make do with like very few ingredients. I would love to hear any of those ideas or recipes, like maybe just the name of it or whatever, and I can do some research because I do find it really fascinating and I love this cake. Of course, hit subscribe, like, comment, share, all the things that help us grow over here on my little corner of the internet. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Do you want a piece of cake?
Yeah.
All right. Come get some cake.